Sure. Thank you, Steve. So today I'm representing the Lake Erie Region Management Committee, and for all the four CAs, there have been new chairs elected, and the members of the committee met on March 17th, 2025, and that was to review the results um, of the interview process for two vacant source protection seats, one being the business rep and one being an industry rep. So the recommendations for the appointment would be brought forward to the Grand River SPA for consideration in April. So that's all I have on the business side. I just want to say congratulations, Sherry. But also Sherry and Caitlin have been doing a great job in keeping us on track and ensuring that we're compliant with all the required regulatory reporting. So that's all I have. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Does anyone have any questions of Judy? Hearing or seeing none, we'll move forward. Is Monica Lemke here today? Okay, so we won't have a update for the Ministry of Environment. Conservation Ontario, Leslie Rich, is she with us today?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I see her now. Floor is yours, Leslie.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I have a few brief updates to provide. The Source Protection Committee, as the chair indicated, we do have a new minister and we're pleased to welcome him to his new position. So I believe MECP staff are in the process of briefing Minister McCarthy, and thus we have delayed our upcoming project managers meeting that was originally scheduled for March 26th. We are rescheduling that for April 30th, and we certainly look forward to that discussion. Conservation Ontario hosted the RMO, the Risk Management Official and Risk Management Inspector and Project Manager seminar last week, and that brings together source protection staff from across the province, including municipalities, conservation authorities, and the consulting world. And so the meeting included a presentation from TSSA, some sharing of resources, some updates from Conservation Ontario, and as well as some knowledge transfer where the staff worked together on case studies. So we have received very positive feedback from that seminar so far, and we do have a bit of a working group that helps us set up those meetings. So we're excited to review that feedback and improve our next meeting as well. And just a final update that Conservation Ontario's annual general meeting is upcoming on April 14th. And this is an opportunity for all conservation authorities to come together as council to discuss our shared priorities. And so we're looking forward to that as well. So that concludes my updates, unless there's any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions of Leslie today? Seeing none, Leslie, you're off the hook. Thank you for your presentation. Everyone's had a chance to review the agenda. I've got a resolution here, if there's no amendments, that the agenda of March 25th, 2025 be approved as distributed. A mover and a seconder, please. John moves, Alan seconds. Anybody opposed? Seeing very few people, we'll say that is carried. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have anything they wish to disclose? Silence again, so I'll say there's nothing there. The minutes of the previous meeting. Everyone's had the opportunity to go through the minutes. And I do have a resolution that the minutes of the previous meeting of January 30th, 2025 be approved as circulated. A mover and a seconder, please. Paul Emerson and Andrew Henry, please. Anybody have any discussion or no hands or anything? So we'll just ask that you approve that resolution by maybe raising your hands. Okay, then that too is carried. Delegations, we've got one presentation today by two gentlemen, Risk Management Plan Implementation, a Municipal Perspective by Kyle Davis. And Kyle's the Risk Management Official for the Wellington Source Water Protection, and Eric Thruss. And Eric is the Risk Management Official for the Region of Waterloo. Gentlemen, you're on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen and we will get going. Thank you very much for having us today. So let's make sure that this is working. Sorry, and is that visible?
Yes, it is, Kyle.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay. So yeah, I'll introduce myself first, then let Eric introduce himself, and then we'll launch right into it. So my name is Kyle Davis. I'm the risk management official and the manager of the source protection group in the municipalities of Wellington County. So we are a shared service. So we are termed Wellington Source Water Protection, and that's really just so we don't have to have eight logos or 8 business cards, as we are appointed across 7 of our local municipalities and also represent the county of Wellington. And Eric.
Hey, thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Source Protection Committee. So my name is Eric Thus. I am the Risk Management Official with the Region of Waterloo. Just one business card. And yeah, I think with that we'll just hop right in, eh, Kyle?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so the purpose of our presentation today really is just to go over, the realities of risk management plan implementation from, the perspective of Kyle and I have as risk management officials. So I'm going to give a bit of background here. So I apologize if some of this is a bit redundant, but we just figured because there is a little bit here, we should maybe just set a bit of context here. So. The Source Protection Plan, the Clean Water Act, affords us with a number of policy tools. And up on the screen here, we've got 7 key ones. And those tools range from, more restrictive tools such as prohibitions, risk management plans, to less restrictive tools like education and outreach. The first 3 tools on this list fall under Part 4 of the Clean Water Act. And that's where Kyle and I and our RMO colleagues do a lot of our work. Section 59, so that restricted land use piece there, that's really intended to serve as a flag for Planning Act and building permit applications. We can review those in areas where these restrictive policies apply, the policies of prohibitions, risk management plans, those we call Part 4 tools. We can review development applications and building permits in those areas to ensure that these proposed works are compliant with our source protection plan tools and policies. Generally, these tools address new activities. And then with existing activities, we apply a broad range of tools to those as well. Risk management plans are the most common, and we're going to get into that in a couple of slides here. But municipalities can supplement those risk management plans with other tools like education and outreach, providing supplemental information, materials, resources, etc. Municipalities can utilize incentive programs to assist property owners with the cost to implement source protection measures. So these tools can be used in combination with one another, or they can be applied on their own.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Eric and I are going to jump between slides here and just rotate. So I'm going to now talk a little bit more about risk management plans. So risk management plans are legal documents under the Clean Water Act, and they were a tool that was created specifically when the Clean Water Act was brought into force. These outline measures that are required to manage risk to drinking water sources. The activity continues. So this is not a prohibition. Prohibition is a separate tool in a separate section of the Act. So prohibition is under Section 57, which was on the slide previous. Risk management plans are under Section 58 of the Clean Water Act. So activity continues. However, best management practices such as training of staff, storage, in this case we use the example salt storage, but it could be chemical storage, fuel storage, manure storage, spill response measures, record keeping, all become requirements of the RMP. Once these requirements are negotiated between the person engaged in the activity and the risk management official or their staff, there is an ability, and we will talk about it in a few slides, to impose RMPs in certain circumstances, but actually the Act is very clear that first and foremost, we must negotiate. Person engaged that we're negotiating with does vary. It is often the property owner. However, it can also be a tenant, or it can be an operator or a contractor. So if you think in terms of winter maintenance, it could very easily be a winter maintenance landscape contractor. Once agreed to, these requirements become legally binding, and they are then subject to inspections. So these become tools that must be complied with and that we and our inspectors enforce.
Okay, so I think the biggest piece here is when we can apply risk management plans. Do you mind giving a click there, Kyle? So we utilize these for significant drinking water threats only. So these risk management plan policies apply to significant threats only. So we apply them, and these Part 4 tools, and specifically risk management plans, they're meant to apply primarily in the gaps with, where the gaps in other legislation or regulation. So we tend to apply risk management plan policies for activities like chemical handling and storage. That would be DNAPLs, organic solvents, agricultural. So as commercial fertilizer handling and storage, winter maintenance activities, that would be salt application, salt storage, snow storage, and then liquid fuel handling and storage. So we tend to apply these where there are gaps in other legislation. And then these risk management plans policies, they apply to both existing and future significant threats.
Perfect. So picture says it's 1,000 words. So Eric and I pooled some of the pictures we've accumulated over the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years and put them up here just to give you some examples. So going from left to right, so here's an example of a parking lot where there's been brine or liquid salt application ahead of a winter event. And this is a way to actually reduce salt loading, because you're not putting salt on after the ice and snow has already accumulated. In fact, what you're trying to do is break the chemical bond between the salt and the pavement before it happens. So that's the application of brine. You see this a lot with regional roads, and in the county of Wellington also does this as well on our roads. So some of them can be complex. So some of these measures. So that obviously moving to brine is a more complex measure, but some of them can be simple. So if you move into the snow pile there, it's really just about siting the snow pile and where the snow pile is sited on the site, so that when it does melt, because it invariably does, that the water and the meltwater doesn't create a re-icing hazard. And this is especially important when we have a winter, unlike this winter, when there's a lot of freeze and thaw happening in January and February. That's where we do see a lot of salt application or over application occurring, because there's an improper location of a snow pile. It thaws and runs into the catch basin, but it's over like a desire path or a place where somebody actually walks quite a bit. Then moving along into out of kind of winter maintenance and into some of the chemical stuff. Some of them can also be simple. So the one on the picture on your right here is actually a picture in one of our towns, and this is an auto parts store. And so when we inspected this site, the basement, which is below this floor, is dirt. This is a wooden floor. It's an old building. It's a kind of a Main Street, Ontario sort of location. And we got into the 20 liters plus of chemicals. And the easy measure was put them in totes. So if something does leak, it's not then leaking down through the cracks in the floor and onto the dirt. In the middle is a picture of very typical fuel storage tanks. So these are double wall tanks. You got traffic bullards, so someone doesn't run into them, as well as there's vacuum interstitial gauges, and these are often monitored. And then last but not least, some of the agricultural ones. This is just an example of some spacing for some of the crops. But really what we get into on the agricultural side is manure application, fertilizer application, pesticide application, and storage.
Thank you, Kyle. So digging a little deeper then into a subset of requirements for one of our risk management plan sets, and that would be winter maintenance. So, the salt application, salt storage. So as Kyle mentioned earlier, risk management plans include legally binding measures and then are subject to compliance and enforcement. So for a risk management plan for salt for winter maintenance, we'd be looking for things that address both the contractor on site. So that could be training or certification under the Smart About Salt program or an equivalent. Requirements for the contractor to do things like calibration on their equipment, proper record keeping and documentation, and then measures we apply to the property itself. So that could be looking at, as in the previous slide example, where snow storage is piled. So, we can get at a lot of ice formation prevention by putting snow in the proper spots, ensuring that downspouts aren't draining to sidewalks and parking areas. So we can get at some of that ice formation prevention. Things like closing low traffic areas. Here in Waterloo region, we have quite an extensive program to close down redundant stairwells and sidewalks, and that's just again with the idea that if we have those areas closed down, we're not applying salt, and that's a pretty good risk mitigation measure. Cleaning up material, spilled salt, excess application of salt, or materials in the spring. And actually, just before this I hopped on this call, I was a little worried because our facility staff have some leaf blowers out in the parking lot clearing up some excess salt. So that's another measure that we can use to mitigate some of the salt that goes down. Alternatives, pickled sand, treated salt, or liquid application when temperature impacts the effectiveness of salt, and then proper salt storage. So these are a bit of a snapshot or overview of some of the specific measures that we'd look to incorporate in our risk management plan for those winter maintenance activities.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. And we're going to now talk just about numbers. So we'll start with Wellington first. So in terms of existing, we'd mentioned off the top that RMPs do apply to existing and future, and we will talk about future in a few slides. But for existing, we wanted to give the committee a bit of an idea of the numbers we are talking about here. So the numbers that you see there, it's approximately 3,000 existing significant drinking water threats for quality and tens of new significant drinking water threats that are established every year in Wellington County. Now, it is important to note that for, say, winter maintenance that Eric was just talking about, there are usually 3 to 4 threats per property. So this is not a property count, this is a threat count. And you will see some of this in Sherry's reports coming up on annual reporting. So when we talk about properties, the property number is lower than this. But when talking about threats, we're approximately 3,000 existing significant drinking water threats within Wellington County wellhead protection areas. Now, if you know Wellington County, we're only about 100,000 people. So we're not a huge area, but we do have some urban areas. About 70% of these significant drinking water threats are subject to RMP policies. And currently for Lake Erie, for Grand River, we have approximately 50 RMPs negotiated and signed, plus renewals and amendments to those signed and negotiated RMPs, because that is definitely something that is happening more and more in the last couple of years. I mentioned for Lake Erie because for Wellington County, we actually have 5 source protection plans that apply to us. So our total number countywide is around 100 RMPs negotiated and signed. The other 50, however, being in other source protection plans, not in Lake Erie. And we'll now compare that to Wellington versus Waterloo. So again, rural, small urban scenario for Wellington County, and now for Waterloo.
Thank you, Kyle. So yeah, Waterloo, similar circumstances to what Kyle had described there, but just a greater scale, just higher numbers kind of across the board. So in Waterloo, we have approximately 5,300 existing drinking water threats, and then hundreds of new ones, and those largely come about through the high level of development that's going on here in the region. About 75% of those those drinking water threats are subject to risk management plans. As Kyle mentioned, again, for us, it would be similar. The numbers of properties would be lower, but certainly still in the order of magnitude of the thousands. And then, yeah, here in Waterloo Region, we've negotiated hundreds of risk management plans. But then we're also extensively into risk management plan renewals and amendments of those negotiated and signed risk management plans. So those numbers get tracked a little differently. Once we've negotiated a risk management plan, the activity is considered managed. So if we're spending time on a renewal or an amendment to that risk management plan, it's not necessarily tracked in the overall level of managed activities. Okay, so just to kind of walk through what the process looks like to negotiate a risk management plan. So once we've confirmed that there is indeed a threat on the property, and we've determined that it's a significant drinking water threat, and the risk management plan policy applies, we do a reach out. That could look a lot different depending on the situation. Sometimes we do in person. We'll just drop in. We might be at the site next door, and we just kind of pop in and just mention something. Letters here in Waterloo Region, that's our typical approach to making that initial contact. Letters look pretty formal and ideally grab the attention of the property owner. But we've done other things and methods in other municipalities as well, things like door hangers and other things. Just the idea there is just to try to get someone. It's not always the right person, and that's number two. So once we've gotten some level of contact at a property, then we need to figure out who's the appropriate contact. So I've got a couple of examples here, but there could be someone engaged in the activity. So that could be someone who is the property manager, for example, persons with knowledge of the activity. So sometimes, in some cases, the property manager oversees the contractor for winter maintenance, but there are people on site that really have knowledge of that activity, or the contractor themselves. So they're often a piece of the puzzle when it comes to filling out and collecting this information on the activity. And then oftentimes the person with signing authority who will ultimately sign the risk management plan and bind the corporation is someone entirely different. So determining all of that takes quite a bit of time, or it can take quite a bit of time. And sometimes when we've lined up who the appropriate contacts are, they change organizations or retire. That tends to be a popular one here in Waterloo Region. We'll get all the way to a prepared risk management plan with someone, and then they'll retire, and then we have to start the process over again. So then we work with those individuals, those appropriate contacts, to collect activity and site details. We work with property owners to develop the risk management plan and really collectively, collaboratively identify best practices to implement. So, sometimes we're capturing things that are already occurring on site, and then oftentimes we're identifying other measures that we can implement to again just further mitigate the impact of whatever that activity is. And so the risk management plan captures all of those important details, like what, how, when, and who. And then finally, when all of that is together and the risk management plan is everyone's comfortable with the risk management plan content, then we get to signatures. That can go fairly quickly. The whole process can take a couple of weeks. It can take a couple of months, or typically what we'll see in larger corporations, there might be a lengthy legal review, for example, of the risk management plan before it can be signed off. So sometimes these risk management plan negotiations can take years. But all of that being said, this last point is really important. Under Section 58, the risk management plan section of the Clean Water Act, we're required to negotiate, and that's always our preference. We'll get into that approach down the road, or in a couple of slides. But our preference is always to negotiate. We're trying to work with property owners, property managers. We want something that is implementable, that's practical, that works for everyone, and then of course meets the intent of the source protection plan policy.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. So that takes us through the existing RMPs. So now we're going to talk a little bit about future RMPs. And first of all, to understand what future RMPs are, these are risk management plans that come in through planning or building approvals. So often we're doing these discussions at site plan application. Sometimes it can be a building permit, and it can be earlier in the process too, official plan, zoning bylaw amendments, things like that. And the reason we catch them at this point is the Act actually makes um, the risk management plan and a particular notice under the Act applicable law under the building code. So the building permit can't actually be issued until they've satisfied the source protection requirements. And from a planning perspective, the application cannot be deemed complete before they satisfy the source protection requirements, or an RMO allows it to move to the next step. Often at planning, we are allowing it to move to the next step, and the final requirement is occurring at building. So this is the Section 59 process that was on one of the very first slides that we showed you. So this means that most are negotiated during the planning approval process. So we start that negotiation there. They may not be signed right in the planning approval process, or they may be, but they definitely have to be signed before the building permit is issued. This gives applicants a really strong incentive to come to agreement on the RMP. Often, in some cases, Eric was talking about existing taking weeks, months, or even years. With future RMPs, I think the quickest I've seen is signed within an hour. We send it to them and it's signed and sent back to us because they want their approval, right? And they're moving forward on their condo, their manufacturing expansion, whatever it is. There is also then internally a pressure on our staff, source protection, whether it's in Waterloo, Wellington, or any other municipality, or CA. The pressure is to prioritize these risk management plans so you don't hold up development. So especially because of that applicable law piece with building, we must make sure that we've got the ducks in a row and we're ready to go when we get to building. So majority of the RMPs in Wellington, and I think Eric would agree for Waterloo, we're signing majority of our RMPs actually through this process. There's a strong incentive for people to come to the table with us. We have a strong incentive to make sure we're not holding things up. And you already have identified the appropriate contact. You often can easily get your questions answered on kind of chemical storage, or who's the contractor for winter maintenance, etc. And this is where we're getting a lot of work done. Now, where this is just a little bit of a catch that people should kind of understand is some of these RMPs that we're dealing with in future are actually enumerated existing threats. And that's because the building, so think about an expansion to an auto parts manufacturer. The building already exists. We enumerated that there was chemical storage, fuel storage, whatever, when we did the initial source protection plan, back in 2016, but they've come in now for an amendment. And that's then where we get the RMP signed. And sometimes we see situations where people who have ghosted us, we have not heard from them at all. We've dropped lots of things off to them. All of a sudden, they're very willing to talk to us and very willing to get things signed once it's holding up their planning approval.
And then, so again, like going back to the comment made earlier, RMPs are meant to be negotiated. So the Clean Water Act gives risk management officials the ability, the power to impose risk management plans. So we do have that ability in our back pocket, but the intent is to always negotiate first. The intent of the act was not to impose risk management plans on a broad scale. Just practically, the ability to, or the idea of imposing thousands of risk management plans at once just isn't. It's just not necessarily practical. So these powers wouldn't be applicable at a broad scale, but it gives us that ability that our kind of that card in our back pocket to allow enforcement when negotiation has failed. So again, we're reluctant to take this approach if it can be avoided. So, we know, and it's kind of human nature. If you have buy-in, if you have agreement on measures, it's going to increase the likelihood of implementation and compliance. So, we could force a risk management plan and we could force through measures. What's the likelihood that those are going to be implemented? So we might get tied up then in enforcement and compliance. So our goal is always to get something that works for everyone. It avoids adversarial relationships. And then just the reality of our negotiations, the delays are rarely in bad faith. These negotiations that take years, or the plans that take years to negotiate. It's rarely in bad faith. More often than it could be staffing changes, ownership changes, financial concerns, competing priorities. Oftentimes how salt is managed on a parking lot and a property is not necessarily a business owner's top concern. That's kind of the reality. It might be ours, but it's not theirs. Not to say that it's not a concern, but it's not the top one. So, so again, like our goal is to try to work with everyone. Like Kyle said, if we aren't making progress with a business owner, with a property owner, there's a good chance down the road we'll see them through the Section 59 process, a building permit or a development application, and then we'll work with them then. Just again, it comes down to those priorities.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And just to close things off, we're just going to give you two quick case studies. So, Eric had mentioned corporate sign-off as being one of the barriers, and it's just reality, right? It's not a bad faith thing. It's just reality that we all have bosses, and our bosses have bosses. So, I'm going to give you a case study of an RMP that is in place, and we successfully negotiated with. So, it is a textile manufacturer. Here's the facility right there, and the arrow points to it. It is in a WUPA B, so it's a 2-year time of travel. The C, the 5-year time of travel with a score of 6. However, it's 300 meters from our municipal well. So there's just the edge of the WUPA A peeking into the corner there. So it's about 300 meters from this corner of the building to our municipal well. There's thousands of liters of chemicals stored on site. There's an example of part of the tank farm. And it was recently, when we negotiated, this is a few years ago now, recently purchased by a US parent company. So when we got into discussions with this particular landowner, some of the initial discussions had been with the previous owner. It's then been purchased by this US parent, and there was some initial pushback about whether an RMP even applied. There was some misunderstanding, didn't know what the Clean Water Act is. There's actually a Clean Water Act in the States, so there's a bit of confusion around there. And just not really understanding the requirements. The negotiation occurred over 2 years. Specifically, this is about chemical handling. So we did have some discussions around DNAPLs and dense non-aqueous phase liquids and whether they were or were not on the site. We actually successfully used some of the recent ministry changes about 4 years ago in terms of bringing a list of industries in, and we actually used that successfully in this negotiation. And yeah, the negotiation started with the plant managers, quickly evolved to including some of the corporate environmental health and safety folks, including the ones located nationally here and also internationally in the States, and then a discussion overall of how we're going to implement this RMP. The RMP was agreed to. It was not imposed. It was agreed to. It took 2 years. And part of that 2 years, we actually had it agreed to within about a year, 14 months. But part of the remaining time, and anybody who's worked with U.S. companies, this will probably make sense. This will probably sound familiar, was that they weren't willing to sign it until all the measures were actually complied with. And that's not actually a requirement that we require, but it was a requirement that they required from a liability perspective. So, for instance, there's 300 employees, so they wanted to complete the introductory source water protection training for all 300. There's a subset of those employees that are spill responders and they're emergency responders, and they wanted to complete all of that training for the spill responders. And they actually went above and beyond. So we were only signing this RMP for chemical handling, which you see there in the photo. They also had some diesel fuel on site, and technically that's not a significant threat. However, this company voluntarily decided, a couple of them were identified as single wall tanks, and this company voluntarily decided to go in, replace all those with double wall tanks, and really just kind of upgrade overall their spill response plan, so it handled not just the chemicals but all fuel that was on site as well. So really, I do look at this as a success. It took us 2 years though. So just that's, I think, something to, when we're talking about existing, these things can take some time.
And then I'll run through just again a quick example of a future negotiation risk management plan. So this is a residential mixed use development, fairly large scale. It's a little difficult to see here, but multiple condo towers, things like that. So it's located in WAPA B and C, vulnerability from 6 all the way through 10. And then also some issue contributing areas here at play as well. Chloride, sodium, and TCE issue contributing areas here. This example is fairly, it's kind of on the extreme end, but it's not uncommon for us to, to see sites like this that, have multiple activities. So in this case, it's salt application and fuel storage. Fuel storage is related to backup generators for the condo towers. And this particular one has had multiple phases, dozens of permit and development applications through the years. Some of this site had received approval prior to the initial implementation of our source protection plan back in 2016. We've got kind of interesting mix of existing activities here and then future activities. So every time, those dozens of permit applications, development applications, every time one of those comes through, whether it's submitted directly to the region or through our local area municipality, we need to review that. So, this is a long-term development site. We anticipate many more phases, applications and building permits that we'll need to review. So we've had the initial risk management plan signed. That took a bit of time. The property owners the development company had to be comfortable or became comfortable with the risk management plan requirements and what the negotiation looked like. And since then, we've had 3 amendments. And like I said, we anticipate some additional ones. So every time there's a new phase added, we're looking to expand the SALT application risk management plan measures to include the new parking lots or vehicle driveways. And yeah, so this is just an example, again, a bit of an extreme example, but one where, we have the activity managed, but it is a lot of ongoing work, just doing those amendments and development application, permit reviews, etc.
And that's it. We're happy to take any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen, but there's our contact information, and we'll send this to Caitlin and Sherry so they can distribute this for you as well. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Kyle and Eric. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Seeing no hands or hearing no questions, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I'm really interested in salt myself now that I've had my eyes opened as what's happening in the Muskokas and Lake Simcoe and that, and very interesting. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Moving on, we've got one item correspondence, the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee to MECP Environmental Permissions Branch. Read the letter of support for comments made on ERO postings 019-0240 and 019-9325 Lafarge Quarry and Glen Christie Quarry PTTW applications dated February the 19th, 2025. I have one resolution here, that correspondence from March 25th, 2025 be received for information. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Mover is Linda, seconder is John. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll ask for a show of hands that be carried. And I think we're good. Thank you very much. Moving on, Sherry's going to talk to us about SPC 250301 Source Protection Program update.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a short report this month. So the implementation working group met in February. We had some great discussions about pesticide threats. We reviewed some of our monitoring policies related to official plan and zoning bylaw conformity, and also got some municipal feedback in planning for our upcoming public consultations for the Section 36 updates. And then you'll see an update on our timelines for all of our ongoing amendments and updates. And I did want to point out, so you will receive reports today for the County of Brantford, City of Brantford amendments. And once those are submitted to the ministry, in terms of Section 34 amendments, the GGET water quantity amendment is the last one that's kind of on our radar for the near term. And the rest of our focus on our work plan will be on the Section 36 updates to the Grand River and Long Point region assessment report and source protection plan. And not included in the report, we did receive just yesterday approval on the Region of Waterloo Section 34 amendment. So the committee will receive that formally as correspondence in June, but I did want to point that out as it will come into effect in April. That's the end of that report.
Thank you, Sherry. Any questions to Sherry with respect to her report? Alan?
Just one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see there, Sherry, that we are still waiting for ministry comments on the GET, but the request for the extension, have we already sent that in then, and we're just waiting to hear from that as well?
So through you, Chair, we have submitted a request for an extension on the Long Point region, Section 36. And I understand that we should receive approval on that shortly. It's just been delayed because of the election. And we're currently working on a revised work plan to submit a request for the Grand River Section 36.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we do have a resolution that report SPC 250301 Source Protection Program update be received as information. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Amy and George, thank you. No further discussion. Raise your hands to move that one forward. Thank you. We'll say that is carried too. Which brings us to Caitlin. Caitlin's going to talk to us about SPC 250302, Annual Progress Report for the Kettle Creek Source Protection Area.
Thank you, Chair. So this, as Steve mentioned, this is the 2024 Annual Progress Report for the Kettle Creek Source Protection Area. But we have one presentation that's going to lump all of the different source protection areas into one. So bear with me as I'm speaking to the next three reports. So the annual reporting process, just a refresher, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this from previous years, but for the benefit of some of our new members, municipal and provincial reports are submitted to the Source Protection Authority by February 1st each year. And then the information that's received through those reports is rolled up into these two annual progress reports. So the first document it's called the Annual Progress Report, and it is a public-facing document. So that's been included in your, as an Appendix A to your reports. And then it also includes the supplemental form. So this is not a public-facing document, but it is a tool that was created by the ministry to collect additional information when rating the overall progress for the year. So that is also included in your reports as Appendix B. And so where we are in the process currently, after we roll up the information into those annual progress reports, we bring that information here to you, the Source Protection Committee, and the committee provides a recommendation for assessing the overall implementation progress for the plan. And then the Source Protection Authority then takes that to the ministry and submits that by the deadline of May 1st. So under the Clean Water Act, Section 46, your role as a Source Protection Committee is after receiving a copy of these annual progress reports, you review them, give them some consideration, and then you're able to provide some written comments that state, in the opinion of the committee, if the objectives that are set out in the source protection plan are being achieved. So this is presented in the annual progress report itself, and it's section 2. It's called a message from your local source protection committee. But then there's also questions 350 and 351 in the supplemental form, which provides the grading and also explains how the source protection committee arrived at its opinion. So just to refresh what the objectives are of the source protection plan, number 1 is obviously to protect the existing and future drinking water sources, and then also to ensure that future activities never become significant drinking water threats, and that existing activities cease to be significant drinking water threats. So when talking about whether or not those objectives are being met, there is a grading process. We provide an overall assessment of the progress of the plan implementation. And this isn't limited to the current reporting year. It's supposed to be reflective over kind of the course of the program. There are 3 grades that can be assigned. So progressing well on target. And this means that the majority of the source protection plan policies have been implemented or they are in progress. They're progressing well. The second grade would be satisfactory, so only some of the plan policies are being implemented or in progress. And then the last one is limited progress, and this would mean that really only a few of the plan policies have been implemented or are in progress. And so that kind of gives the overview of what we're doing today. So I'm just going to jump right into the Kettle Creek Source Protection Area results from the 2024 Annual Progress Report. So the Kettle Creek Source Protection Area, 2 municipal systems, 1 surface water intake at Elgin Primary, and then there are 2 wells in the Belmont Village area. So for our rating number 1, source protection plan policies and addressing significant risks. So this involves, how many of the source protection plan policies have been implemented. So we're recommending giving this the rating progressing well on target, because 100% of the legally binding plan policies that address significant drinking water threats are implemented or in progress. And so this applies to the original source protection plan, but also applies to the recent Section 36 update that was completed and came into effect on August 15th of 2024. So there was 100% of the policies implemented for the original plan, but also for the update as well. And number 2 is the municipal progress. So again, this is given the same rating of progressing well and on target. And that is because there are 3 municipalities that have vulnerable areas where the drinking water threat policies apply. And they are required under the source protection plan to update their official plan in order to conform. So the 3 municipalities in the Kettle Creek source protection area have completed their official plan updates to conform with the source protection plan as of 2024. Category 3 is septic inspections. This isn't applicable for the Kettle Creek source protection area. There are no on-site sewage systems that are drinking water threats or require inspection. Category number 4, risk management plans. Rating recommended is progressing well on target. There is 1 risk management plan for the entire Kettle Creek source protection area, and that one is currently in progress. There are risk management measures in place. There's just kind of a formal progress or process ongoing to formalize the agreement as of 2024. So it is well on its way to getting finalized. Category 5, provincial progress. Progressing well on target. There are no existing significant drinking water threats in Kettle Creek source protection area that require provincial approval. And there were no new prescribed instrument applications either that required a detailed review for source protection. So there isn't much actually to report there for the Kettle Creek source protection area. And this is just a snapshot of all of those categories that I just spoke to and the ratings that have been given to them over the years. So you can see that the Kettle Creek source protection area plan implementation progress has been rated progressing well on target for several years, including 2024. And so that brings us to our overall progress recommendation from the Source Protection Committee. So we are recommending in the report that the committee assign the score of progressing well on target for the overall progress. And this is because it meets that objective of having the majority of the plan policies being implemented or in progress. And then this is, as I mentioned, the opportunity where the Source Protection Committee can provide written comments on your opinion of this plan progress. So we have put the message for the Source Protection Committee into the annual report, but it is open for revision if necessary. So at this time, as I mentioned, progressing well on target. The majority of the plan policies have been implemented. All of the legally binding plan policies that address threats are implemented, so it's at 100%. And at the time that the plan came into effect in 2015, there were 2 significant drinking water threats. One of those threats was deemed not to exist and was removed from the assessment report through the Section 36 update. So there is only 1 existing drinking water threat in the Kettle Creek Source Protection Area, and there is a risk management plan being negotiated to manage this threat. And that is anticipated for completion in 2025. And that is the end of the report. I will just leave the recommendations up on the screen and give it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Katie. Any questions of Katie with respect to the Kettle Creek report? Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Caitlin, for that. This question kind of will relate to all 4 of them. As I noted as I was going through the MECP, what I call their checklist, and that question report ID number of 351 that you spoke about in your presentation. I understand it, but I just see the draft is the intent is once we've dealt with the recommendations here it's no longer a draft that'll be removed. Is that it's just there for consideration right now? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, through you, Chair. That is correct. Yes. So we've put in a draft response, but we are meeting today with the committee. And if there's anything they'd like to add or any revisions they'd like to make, we can certainly do that.
Thank you, Katie. Any other questions? Hearing none, I guess we'll move on with the resolutions. I have 3 resolutions that report SPC 250302, the annual progress report for the Kettle Creek Source Protection Area be received for information. And that in the opinion of the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee, implementation of the Kettle Creek Source Protection Plan is progressing well and is on targets towards achieving plan objectives. And that the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee directs staff to present the 2024 annual progress report to the Source Protection Authority for submission. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Ian, mover, seconder. Alan, thank you, Alan. Show of hands for to carry it, please. And anybody on screen that can just maybe say hello or whatever would work. Hearing nothing, I think we'll announce that as carried. And Caitlin, if you'll continue on with SPC 250303, annual progress report for the Catfish Creek Source Protection Area.
Thank you, Chair. Catfish Creek Source Protection Area is one municipal system. So there are 2 wells in the Brownsville area. And you'll see from last year, we gave ratings of progressing well on target for all of the categories, and we are doing the same this year for Catfish Creek. So I'll just go through those quickly here. The Source Protection Plan policy implementation, progressing well on target. So again, same as last year, 100% of the legally binding plan policies that address significant drinking water threats are being implemented. And this applies to the original source protection plan, but also to the comprehensive Section 36 update update, which was approved in September of 2024. Municipal progress. One municipality, Oxford County, has vulnerable areas where there are significant drinking water threat policies. Oxford County did complete their review and update of their official plan in 2022 to ensure that they conform with the source protection plan. Oxford County is yet to determine if they need to do another official plan update in order to conform to the Section 36 update to the source protection plan, and they will begin to report on this progress for 2025. Septic inspections, progressing well on target. So there are 9 on-site sewage systems that require inspection every 5 years, but none of these systems were due to be inspected in 2024. Category 4 risk management plans. There is one risk management plan that has been agreed to since the source protection plan came into effect in 2015. And since that time, there's no additional risk management plans are needed or pending. So that one is being rated progressing well on target. Provincial progress, we are recommending progressing well on target. The provincial ministries have completed their review of any previously issued provincial approvals for the original source protection plan, and there are no updates needed to any existing instruments as a result of the comprehensive Section 36 update effective in 2024. And then as well, there were no new prescribed instrument applications that the ministry needed to review for source protection. So we're recommending the same grade as last year as progressing well on target for provincial progress in Catfish Creek source protection area. And then here is the timeline again. So it shows all of the 5 categories and the overall rating as progressing well on target for plan implementation ever since 2017, all the way to 2024 for Catfish Creek source protection area. And for the committee recommendation of overall progress, staff is recommending the rating progressing well on target. The majority of the plan policies have been implemented and or progressing. So once again, the message from your social or source protection committee for Catfish Creek source protection area progressing well on target. All the legally binding plan policies are implemented that address significant drinking water threats. And the original Catfish Creek source protection plan came into effect in 2015. And at that time, there were 19 significant drinking water threats. Since that time, we did the comprehensive update under Section 36, and that took effect in September of 2024, as I mentioned. So during preparation of that update, the number of significant drinking water threats was updated to 20, but field verification has reduced the total number to 14 significant threats, and all of these have been addressed as of 2024. And so that is the end of the report. Here are the recommendations, and I will pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you again, Caitlin. Any questions of Caitlin with respect to the Catfish Creek report? Hearing none, I got 3 resolutions here that I'll read and then ask for a mover and a seconder. That report SPC 2503 annual progress report for the Catfish Creek source protection area be received for information. That in the opinion of the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee, implementation of the Catfish Creek Source Protection Plan is progressing well and is on target towards achieving planned objectives. And that the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee directs staff to present the 2024 annual progress report to the Source Protection Authority for submission. Looking for a mover. Larry, thank you. Seconder, please. John? No further discussion. We'll ask for a raise of hands to carry that one. Looks unanimous in this room. Thank you. Caitlin, you're still there. You're going to talk to us about SPC 2503 annual progress report for the Long Point Region Source Protection Area.
Thank you, Chair. So Long Point Region Source Protection Area, there are 10 municipal systems that include 5 surface water intakes and 35 wells. The Source Protection Plan policy implementation and addressing significant risks. We are recommending the rating of progressing well on target. And this is because 100% of the legally binding plan policies that address significant drinking water threats are either implemented or are in progress. Category 2, municipal progress. We are recommending progressing well on target. There are 8 municipalities that have vulnerable areas where significant drinking water threat policies apply in the Long Point region. 5 municipalities are required to update their official plan in order to conform with the Source Protection Plan. And this includes the municipality of Bayham, Norfolk County, Oxford County, Haldeman County, and the township of Malahide. And all 5 of those municipalities have completed their official plan conformity exercise. Septic inspections. There are 101 on-site sewage systems in the Long Point region source protection area that do require inspection every 5 years. However, none of these systems were due to be inspected in the year 2024. So we're just recommending progressing well on target for septics. Risk management plans, we are recommending this year progressing well and on target. There was one new risk management plan in Long Point region that was agreed to in 2024, and that was to manage 2 significant drinking water threats identified in Norfolk County. There are currently 13 risk management plans that are in progress as of the end of 2024. And there were many inspections conducted throughout the year. So there were 56 inspections carried out just for activities designated under Section 56 of the Clean Water Act. So the municipalities certainly have Part 4 processes in place to implement these policies. And we do see that they're making tremendous progress. So we have recommended progressing well on target for 2024. Provincial progress, the ministries have completed the review of the previously issued provincial approvals. So there were no existing instruments that required any updating or amending in the Long Point region. There was one new application for a prescribed instrument that underwent a detailed review, but it was determined to have no source protection implementation requirements. So we are recommending that the provincial progress be rated progressing well on target for Long Point region. And this is the snapshot of the rating of the overall plan progress over the years. We did have a rating for category 4 risk management plans as progressing well short of target in 2023, but we are updating that to progressing well on target based on the reporting results for 2024. And the overall plan and implementation progress has been progressing well since 2022. So the SPC recommendation for overall progress, again, same as last year, we are recommending progressing well on target for Long Point region. And this is primarily because the majority of the source protection plan policies have been implemented or they are well in progress. So a message from your local source protection committee. The majority of the plan policies, as I said, are implemented. All of the legally binding plan policies that are addressing significant drinking water threats are either implemented or they are in progress. There is a total of 719 potential existing threats identified in Long Point region as of 2024, the end of 2024. And of these threats, there's 160 that have been determined no longer to exist, and 324 of them have been reported as managed, or they just no longer pose a risk at all to municipal drinking water sources. So all of the municipalities in Long Point region, they do have their processes in place to ensure that planning decisions conform to the source protection plan, and they are managing or prohibiting new threats as appropriate. That is the end of the report, and here are the recommendations. Pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Again, thank you, Caitlin. Any questions of Caitlin with respect to the Long Point Region Source Protection Report?
I got one, Mr. Chair. That's all right. It's Paul.
I can't see you. You have to identify yourself.
You see me? Okay, it's Paul. I thought it was showing up there. Anyway, I just wanted to ask you, Caitlin, at Turkey Point, there are about 800 cottages or so down there, and I'm not sure whether 20% would be full-time residents. So there's a lot of people serviced by a private water system. Would there be a source water protection plan in place for that? Or who regulates that? Or do you know?
Through you, Chair. No, the private communal systems would not be included in the source protection plan. It's just the municipal systems that were listed in the presentation. I don't, does that answer your question, or was there more?
I guess, yeah. So I guess second part would be, so it's not covered through this, the Clean Water Act, or this part of the Clean Water Act. Where would where would that system be regulated?
So through you, Chair. So there would be regulations under the Safe Drinking Water Act
Okay.
for those systems. But again, we haven't chosen to bring any private systems into our source protection plan. So there are no source protection policies covering those
No
systems.
source protection. And Mr. Chair, I think Andrew Henry had his hand up. He probably knows the answer there.
Andrew, do you
All
have
right.
a question?
Yep, Mr. Chair, so private wells, they're typically residential, low consumption. They're regulated by the Ministry of Health, not the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks. So they're not regulated under any of these. I think there's some provisions where consideration where they might bring in private or request to be brought in, but generally speaking, they're not regulated.
Okay, so you're saying a system like the one at Turkey Point that's privately.
I'm not familiar with the one at Turkey Point.
Right.
If it is serving more than 6 residences or exceeds, I think it's 50,000 liters per day on average, then they are
Right.
regulated under the Source Protection Act and the Clean Water Act.
So these serve, well, this serves a large number of people. This system serves, like there's probably, like I say, 800 residents there. Now they're not all year round, but probably,
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a communal well system that would apply under the Safe Drinking Water Act.
so falling under this, what we're doing here? Fall under what we're doing here?
I'm sorry, what's
Or
that?
would it fall under like the Drinking Water Act? So would it be covered by what we're just talking about today?
No, unless they voluntarily ask to be included, but generally speaking, no, it does not.
So who's making, I guess I'm just asking those kind of systems, who's making sure that they're being run properly and people aren't going to get sick?
I think Chris is hoping to jump in here. I
Yeah,
see his
Chris.
hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know Turkey Point specifically, but private systems would be regulated, I think, under OREG 170. So they'll have to have a licensed operator, depending on the size of the system. That'll dictate whether or not, how often they need to take samples, the type of treatment, stuff like that. And then they'll have an annual report that'll go similar to a municipal system, that'll go to the Ministry of the Environment. It's just not because it's private, the private communal systems aren't included in the source protection plan. But
Okay.
yeah, it will be covered somewhere unless
Yeah. Well, I figured, yeah, I just wasn't sure where. You're thinking it's Reg 170?
I believe 170 and some of
Yeah.
the other colleagues here.
So just for clarification, the Safe Drinking Water Act regulates the operation, maintenance of drinking water systems, largely municipal, non-municipal drinking water systems, including Turkey Point. The Clean Water Act is the source protection plan, so protecting the source of those.
Yeah.
And the Clean Water Act does not apply, or the source protection plans that we have here do not apply to the Turkey Point. Only the Safe Drinking Water Act regarding the operation.
Okay.
Yeah, which is 170. Sorry, I just looked it up. So yeah, we're talking, Andrew and I are talking about the same thing, but for Paul's benefit, it should be, if you look up OREG 170, it should be there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Chris and Andrew for helping with that, and Caitlin, of course. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Paul, and Andrew and Chris. Thanks for jumping in and helping us. Amy, you got your hand up.
Yes, thanks through you, Chair. I don't know if this is necessarily a question this year, perhaps a comment or suggestion for next year. I'm not disagreeing with the progressing well on targets necessarily. And this comment's going to apply to both Long Point and the Grand River. Once you start getting into a large number of threats, I'm not finding the layout of this report particularly helpful in assessing progress. So the Long Point one that we just saw, you have to kind of do a bit of math to see how many threats are still outstanding. So it tells you that there were 719 potential existing threats as of December 31st. Then it says 160 of those don't exist, which is a bit confusing because if that was the count as of December 31st, how can 160 of them disappeared before the report was written at the end of December? So that's a bit confusing. I assume it means 160 since the plan was first written. So it says 160 don't exist, and then it says 324 are managed. So you actually have to do the math then to say, okay, so there's 235 are left that are still outstanding. And then you look through the report and you see that there are 19 risk management plans in place. And one, I think it said one was negotiated this year. But how many are left? So there's 235 threats, significant threats left. Did a lot of those require risk management plans? Did only a couple of those require risk management plans? How far are we actually through the process? Is 19 a good number, or is it only a fraction of what still has to be done? So I just found that the information, it was very difficult to tell how we come to the conclusion of progressing well on target. So I don't know if that's really a question to be addressed right now, something to consider for next year. I don't know if anybody else had felt that way, but I found it difficult to back up our conclusion. Not that I necessarily disagree with the conclusion.
Thank you, Amy. Sherry's going to help us with that.
Thanks. So through you, Chair, a couple points to address here. So first, what we are providing you for the annual progress reports is based on the template from the ministry and the questions that come directly from the ministry. So we are a little bit limited in terms of the layout and how we're providing that information to you. That said, if there is additional information that you feel would be helpful, please do let us know as soon as possible, and we will work to try to figure out how we can incorporate that or get that information to you, even if it's only through a report or a presentation and kind of outside of the reporting templates. We are in discussions with the ministry to try to provide feedback on how we can improve this process going forward. But it's yet to be determined whether the templates will change for next year or not. So that's kind of one comment. But then to specifically address your question about how to evaluate progress, in terms of the overall progress, the committee did receive a report back in January where we proposed that the overall progress of plan implementation should really focus on the policies. And so what we're presenting to you here is that in most cases, 100% of the policies are either implemented fully or the implementation is in progress. So yes, it doesn't break down how many RMPs have been negotiated compared to how many are needed, but we are seeing progress every year in terms of that number, and we are seeing that there are processes in place and the policies are in fact being implemented.
Thanks. Just through you, Chair. Again. Yes, thanks. I appreciate the overall number. Is just that are we progressing on? Have we done at least something under every policy work that you're required to do something on? But yeah, it's really more of a question about the RMPs. Is this information I'm looking for, is it in the RM there? Do they still do annual RMO reporting? Does that still happen? And is the information I'm looking for, is it in those reports?
So through you, Chair. So the process is yes, municipalities and RMOs do still submit a report directly to the Source Protection Authority. Again, that process could change in the future. It may go directly to the ministry, which means it may look a little bit different. What is not in those reports is the number of RMPs required. So we do have the ABCD table that outlines how many threats have been enumerated. And some of those, when you compare them to the policies, you will see that maybe one threat, there's only an RMP policy. So you would be able to deduce that all of those need an RMP and you would be able to see how many are left. But for a lot of our threats, there are multiple policy tools being used. So no, we do not have a place where we are documenting how many we think are needed. And at this, we haven't really felt the need to put that question forward because keep in mind that the number of enumerated threats is really an estimate, and a lot of those have not yet been verified on the ground.
Right. One last thing, just through you, Chair. Might I suggest that we have a discussion as a committee next year before the reports are presented to us when the information is being put together, because I'm not asking for any extra information to go in the report. I understand it has a template. I also understand we don't want to raise any red flags in these public reports that are unnecessary, but perhaps as information that us as a committee, questions we might like to ask beforehand so we can have the information so we can look at it and say, yes, we agree progressing well on target is an acceptable choice under all of these categories. So as I say, I'm not requesting anything for this year. I'm happy to approve them this year. I'm just wondering if next year, before the work is done, if we have things that we would like to see just in the background, perhaps, maybe we can have that discussion next year. Anyway, I think I've made my point.
And thank you for that, Amy. I've got 3 resolutions to read here if there's no more questions about the Long Point report. Linda, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's in relation to that. And I appreciate Amy's comments. And it's not unlike comments that I think and discussions that we've had over the last couple of years with respect, particularly for Long Point and for the GRCA. And as the chair of the IWG, I understand, I appreciate, I'm probably privy to a little more discussion from a municipal level, but I think from an overall perspective, my view is, and has always been, that things are progressing very well. Yes, we have in those 2 areas what seems like a lot of threats that we haven't dealt with in some managed way, either through risk management plans or some of the others. But I think at the end of the day, staff and the municipalities are making all reasonable efforts. And we heard that through Kyle and Eric's presentations today, that they're making all reasonable efforts to progress well. And I support that.
Eric and Kyle, are you still on the call? Do you have any further comments with respect to Linda's presentation or statement?
Yes, certainly we can absolutely provide comments if the committee wishes. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you, Linda. I agree. I think you've put it quite well and quite elegantly in terms of the work that's going on. This is partially why we put the presentation together and structured it the way that we did. We wanted to talk to the committee about the existing threats versus the future threats, and just what we're seeing on the ground. When I first took this job, which was 10 plus years ago, I don't think anybody really expected the future side of things to kind of take off the way it did and really sort of take a lot of the focus, demand a lot of the time and focus. So that's certainly been our experience over the last 8 years since it's been in force. So it means that the existing does take a bit of a back seat sometimes. So now we have had reach outs with a lot of these properties. Could not say that we've reached out to all, but we have certainly done a lot of reaching out, door knockers in education outreach, social media, etc. And there's more work to be done, for sure. One analogy I do use sometimes is that the Ministry of Environment, when they first were established in 1970, had a mandate for environmental compliance approvals across the province. And it took the Ministry of Environment probably 30 or 40 years to get all of them done. I'm not suggesting it's going to take 30 or 40 years, but I'm just saying that it does take some time to work our way through the existing RFPs for sure.
Thank you very much, Kyle. And Eric, did you want to add in anything there?
No, I through you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the questions. Amy's point, I think about just, being certain, ensuring that the Source Protection Committee has all of the, the information they need to, to fully appreciate the progress being made. I think that's valuable. And yeah, I appreciate Kyle and, that perspective. We're doing our best, and I appreciate that the Source Protection Committee fully appreciates that level of effort as well. So yeah, no other comments to add.
Thank you, Eric. Chris, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to agree with Linda, and this is the same conversation. Kyle would have been at the meeting last week for the CTC source protection meeting. How are we doing? Are we doing well? And I think the general consensus is, yeah, doing as well as can be expected with the amount of staff that we have. And on April 10th, I'm sure I'll have the exact same discussion when I'm at the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe source protection meeting. So I think it's what's happening with this source protection committee, and the progress is the same as similar to the others. But I do also agree with Amy, because the other aspect of the reports is that these are public documents that I believe they do get published after the fact on the website, correct? Like the past minutes. So we need something that the public can understand in the rare event that somebody actually tries to go look for it. but I think that's the crux of Amy's point there with the reports. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I've got 3 resolutions I've got to read here. Then I'll ask for a mover in a second. And it's that report SPC 250304 annual progress report for the Long Point Region Source Protection Area be received as information. That in the opinion of the Lake Erie Resource Source Protection Committee, implementation of the Long Point Region Source Protection Plan is progressing well and is on target towards achieving plan objectives. And that the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee directs staff to present the 2024 annual progress report to the Source Protection Authority for submission. A mover and a seconder, please. Andrew, you're moving, and the seconder is Emily. Thank you. Everybody in favor of the resolutions, raise your hands, and I would say that is carried. Thank you. Caitlin, you're resting now, and Sherry, you're up. And Sherry's going to talk to us about SPC 250305 annual progress report for the Grand River Source Protection Area. Well, you are, Sherry.
Thank you, Chair. So the Grand River Source Protection Area has 43 municipal systems. So this includes 6 surface water intakes and 216 wells. And we also have 1 First Nation system, which is the surface water intake at Ohsweken. So just to go through the different categories, we're rating the Grand River as progressing well, on target in terms of policies addressing significant threats. So similar to the others, 100% of legally binding plan policies that address significant drinking water threats are either implemented or in progress. In terms of municipal progress on the ground, all of the upper and single tier municipalities have completed or are in the final processes of completing their official plan amendments to conform to the source protection plans. 5 of the lower tier municipalities have also completed their conformity. And the remaining lower tier municipalities have experienced delays due to recent legislative changes. So it's
Mr. Chair, can
in
that
progress.
presentation be shared to the to Zoom so we can see it?
Give me one moment to share that. Sorry about that.
Are you good there now, Andrew?
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for flagging that, Andrew. Whoops. There we go. Okay, on to the next category. Septic inspections. So we have rated this as progressing well on target. In the grant, there were 181 inspections required. That should say in 2024. Of these, 71% were completed, with very few systems needing either minor or major maintenance. And of the systems that were not inspected, municipalities are working with landowners, or where required, they are seeking orders to complete those inspections. So we expect to see those marked as completed in next year's reporting. For risk management plans, overall, we have 524 risk management plans in place. I'm also going to note that we are aware of at least 35 that have previously been agreed to and later been canceled for various reasons. So we're no longer needed. So, a lot of effort that went into those. In 2024 alone, we had 87 risk management plans agreed to, and these captured 141 significant drinking water threats on 117 properties. And municipalities have also reported that there are 306 RMPs in progress at some stage at the end of 2024. So a lot of effort that went into this. And I will note, I don't have a comparison here, but these numbers have been increasing year over year. For provincial progress, again, we're recommending a rating of progressing well on target. We did see new provincial approvals in the grant. So 16 applications for prescribed instruments underwent a detailed review for source protection. Out of these, 4 of them were issued where a significant drinking water threat was managed through conditions on the permits. So this includes 2 permits to take water, and 2 environmental compliance approvals, 1 for wastewater and sewage and 1 for a waste disposal site. And there are 2 additional prescribed instruments that the ministry reported on where a decision is still pending. So we should receive an update once that decision is made. And so this is what it looks like overall for the Grand River. So similar to Long Point in the past, we had assigned a progressing well short of target score on RMPs. And as we kind of pointed out in the January SPC report, this really was initially meant to be an interim measure during COVID where RMOs were not able to get out on the ground, reaching out to individuals, and progress significantly slowed. It did take a little while for that progress to ramp back up, but we are seeing the numbers increase year over year, and we are satisfied that the progress overall is now progressing well and on target. And similarly for the overall score, we are proposing a shift from the progressing well short of target in previous years to progressing well on target. So this is the overall score. And then just a snapshot of that message from your committee. And again, you have an opportunity to revise the text here as appropriate. And with that, I'll put up the recommendation.
Thank you, Sherry. Any questions of Sherry for the Grand River Source report? Andrew, you've got your hand up, I see, please.
No, my hand's not up. There's nothing on my computer.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions of Sherry? 3 more resolutions to read here before I ask for a mover and a seconder. That report SPC 250305 annual progress report for the Grand River Source Protection Area be received as information. That in the opinion of the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee, implementation of the Grand River Source Protection Plan is progressing well and is on target towards achieving planned objectives. And that the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee directs staff to present the 2024 annual progress report to the Source Protection Authority for submission. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. John, mover. Ian, seconder. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, everybody would raise their hands and we'll say that one is carried too. Thank you. Caitlin, you're back up. Caitlin's going to talk to us about SPC 250306, Section 34 Amendment to the Grand River Assessment Report and Source Protection Plan for the County of Brant. All yours.
Thank you, Chair. This is a quick update, just bringing back the Section 34 amendment to the Grand River Source Protection Plan for the County of Brant. We've seen this Section 34 amendment a few times now. So just to give you an update on where we are in the process, on February 3rd, the Source Protection Committee did release the amendments to the Grand River Assessment Report and Source Protection Plan for public consultation. There was a 35-day consultation period held from February 3rd until March 10th. And during that public consultation period, we did not receive any formal comments. So there were no additional changes or edits made to the amended sections of the Grand River Assessment Report and Source Protection Plan as a result of the consultation. So the final amended documents were posted on the eScribe meeting site. And the next steps now are for the Source Protection Committee to release the Section 34 amendment to the Grand River Source Protection Plan to the Source Protection Authority. And then the Source Protection Authority is responsible then for submitting it to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks for approval. So that is the update for the Section 34 amendment to the Grand River Source Protection Plan for the County of Brant. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions of Caitlin? Seeing none, got 2 resolutions here. That report SPC 250306, Section 34, Amendment to the Grand River Assessment Report and Source Protection Plan, County of Brant be received as information. And that the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee release the Section 34 Amendment to the Grand River Assessment Report and Source Protection Plan to the Source Protection Authorities for submission to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Mover, Paul, seconder, Amy. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, if you'd raise your hands, please. And we'll say that too is carried. Thank you. And Caitlin's going to continue to address us, and she's going to talk about SPC 250307, Section 34, Amendment to the Grand River Assessment Report and Source Protection Plan for the City of Brantford. All yours.
Thank you, Chair. So this is very similar to the report that I just spoke to. So this is regarding the Section 34 amendment, again, to the Grand River Source Protection Plan, but for the City of Brantford chapter. So an update on the process for that amendment. On February 3rd, the Source Protection Committee released the amendment for public consultation. We held the 35-day public consultation period between February 3rd and March 10th. And similar to for the County of Brant amendment, we did not receive any formal comments on the amendment related to the City of Brantford. So there were no additional edits or changes made to the amended sections of the Grand River Assessment Report or the Source Protection Plan as a result of the public consultation. So next steps for this Section 34 amendment is the Source Protection Committee may now release the amendment to the plan to the Source Protection Authority, and the Source Protection Authority will then review the amendment and submit to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks for approval. And that is it for the report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions before I read the resolutions of Caitlin with respect to this report for the City of Brantford? Seeing none or hearing none, I will move forward. That report, SPC 250307, Section 34, Amendment to the Grand River Assessment Report in Source Protection Plan, City of Brantford, be received as information. And that the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee release Section 34 Amendment to the Grand River Assessment Report in Source Protection Plan to the Source Protection Authority for submission to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Ian, thank you. Seconder, Paul, thank you. No further discussion. I'll ask you to raise your hands to carry the motion. Resolutions. Thank you. It's carried. And Sherry, you would be returning to the podium, I guess, to talk to us about SPC 250308, update on GGAT water budget and water quantity policies, process, and timelines.
Hey, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to summarize the past and future milestones in the development of water quantity policies for the GGET or Guelph, Guelph-Hermosa Township water quantity wellhead protection area. And this is to inform the SPC's upcoming review of draft policies. So ultimately, we're requesting that the committee direct the project team to bring the full suite of water quantity policies forward for consideration while we await formal early engagement comments from the ministry. So I strongly encourage everyone to read the report in detail as it provides a lot of really good background for these policies that you will see at an upcoming meeting, but I will just walk you through the report briefly here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The report starts by talking about the Tier 2 water budgets that were approved in it was approved in 2010. And so the results of the Tier 2 water budget showed that the upper speed assessment area, which contains the City of Guelph and Guelph-Hermosa Township drinking water systems, had a moderate potential for groundwater stress. So this then led to the need to complete a Tier 3 assessment. And I did want to point out from the report here, when the Grand River Source Protection Plan was approved in 2015, the approval letter from the minister did communicate a timeline for completing this work. So initially, the timeline stated December 31st, 2017. So this report details the work that was done in advance of that. But at some point, we did determine that timeline was not achievable. And so the revised timelines for this have continued to be dictated by our funding agreements. So every time we've renewed that transfer payment agreement, this has been part of our deliverables. So it is a deliverable for our current 2024 to 2027 transfer payment agreement. And the expectation through our discussions with the ministry has been that this work will be submitted no later than completion of the Section 36 timeline. So with that, just a quick overview of kind of the process and timelines to date. So the Tier 3 water budget for the City of Guelph and Guelph-Hermosa Township combined was initiated The technical work was initiated in 2013 and continued through the end of about 2017. And updates were brought to the SPC throughout that time. So I have linked various reports that you can go back and review if you have any questions or wanted to look at the details of those. So once all the technical work was completed, the next step was to complete a risk management measures evaluation process, which was initiated as a result of the significant risk rating that came from that work. So this was started in 2017. And at the same time, the project team also developed a water quantity policy discussion paper that was also brought forward to the committee. So this all happened around 2017, 2018. Finally, 2018, 2019, the project team moved to actually drafting water quantity policies. And because the Grand River Source Protection Plan has municipal chapters, this means that we are drafting policies for Dufferin County, Wellington County, the City of Guelph, Halton Region, and the Region of Waterloo. So there will be 5 sets of policies to consider for this water quantity area. So informal early engagement discussions were initiated with the ministry in 2018, but we did not submit formal early engagement until about 2021. So where we are at right now is the committee has seen a full set of what we call our consensus policies, and those have been submitted to the ministry. We've received early engagement comments on those and have now addressed those. So we are ready to bring a revised set of those policies back. And then that leaves us with prescribed instrument policies. So we have 2 sets. We have prescribed instrument policies that address permits to take water and prescribed instrument policies that address Aggregate Resources Act permits. And we have brought our policy approaches for both to the committee. That was in June 2024. And both sets of policies have been submitted to the ministry for early engagement. So in early 2024, we did receive comments on the permit to take water policies, and we've revised our policies, are ready to bring those back. And as of today, we have still not received comments on the ARA prescribed instrument policies that were submitted for early engagement in April 2024. So with that, for next steps, we are looking for the SPC to direct us to bring the full suite of policies to the committee for consideration in June. Hopefully, we will receive early engagement comments before that, but we are looking to bring them forward for consideration regardless. Once we do have the final policies and have addressed all the ministry comments, we would be looking to move into the remaining consultation phases, which are outlined in the report. And the expectation is that it would take approximately 18 months to kind of move through the rest of those phases before we could receive approval on an amendment. So that's the end of that report.
Thank you, Sherry. Are there any questions of Sherry on that report? Well, seeing or Linda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Sherry. Is there any indication of why there's been the lag in the almost a year? And like, is there any kind of concern, or it's just been timing issues? And are you expecting them by June? Have you been given any indication?
So through you, Chair. One of the reasons that the ARA policies have taken longer is because it involves comments from both MECP as well as MNR, which is not typical at the early engagement stage. But they did want to engage them as part of this process. So we are expecting to receive 2 separate sets of comments, which I believe has slowed the process. We are hopeful we will receive them soon, but we also don't want to delay this process anymore.
Thank you, Sherry. Any further questions? Seeing none, I have two resolutions I'll read here before I ask for a mover and a seconder. That report SPC 250308 update on the GGET water budget and water quantity policies, process and timelines be received as information. And that the Source Protection Committee direct the project team to bring the full suite of GGET water quality policies forward for consideration concurrently with early engagement. A mover and a seconder, please. Amy, mover, yes. Seconder, George, thank you. If there's no further discussion, can we just raise our hands to carry that motion? And seeing lots of hands, we'll say that is carried. Moving on to number 12, a business arising from previous meetings. Local aggregate threat request under Technical Rule 119. Discussion is being referred to the Lake Erie Region IWG for further consideration. Ongoing, and there's no update on that. Correct, Sherry? An MECP response to SPC concerns regarding Part 4 policy implications for stormwater management subthreats 2, 3, and 2.4, report number SPC 240605, draft policy approaches for sewage subthreats is ongoing with no update. I see no other business. We don't have an agenda for a closed meeting. We do have a next meeting date of June 12th, 2025 at 1 p.m. I don't know whether Sherry will be here for that one. She hopes so. That's good. Looking for someone to move, we adjourn. Larry, comments?
Comments before we close, and I appreciate that Kyle and Eric were online and still for this comment, but I appreciate the fact that with risk management programs that if they are peer-to-peer with those people who are on agricultural advisory committees, sometimes just taking a farmer with a farmer, if it is an agricultural property, to assess that and give recommendation goes a long way to make it a little more comfortable for the farmer that's being approached. And I'd like to make another comment as well about the Long Point that Paul brought up, Long Point region and the cottages. Are they not under Ministry of Health? And I think that was maybe a comment. They have to, or they have the capability to have their water tested for free through the Ministry of Health. Am I correct on that? It would be like any private landowner's well where they would be capable of having a water well tested for free.
Oh, you got your hand up?
Well, I don't have the answer because I asked the question, Larry, too. But if nobody else has the answer right at the moment, I will undertake to look into this whole thing. I was quite interested and very curious. So I'll find out. I can even report back to the next committee who looks after the health and safety of these systems. Because it's a pretty big deal. Like in summertime, I bet you there's 4,000 or 5,000 people, using this system, and it's potable water. So some people are actually drinking it. Others are, obviously using it for other purposes. But so I just was thinking about, I wanted to make sure these things aren't somehow falling between a crack. And it's probably not our responsibility, as I'm hearing from the people here, but I'd like to look into this. I can report that back, Larry, if you'd like, or if that's all right, Mr. Chair.
Everybody looking deep always helps. And thank you Larry, for the question. And someone else addressed it, and I couldn't catch who that was earlier. Was it Andrew, you? You get your hand up. So thank you for that, Andrew. Looking for a mover to adjourn if there's anything further.
So moved.
Ken has got his hand up there. So moved. That's perfect. Thank you, everyone. It's been a learning day for me. And I'm really interested in this farmer stormwater management as we go forward. Hope to see everybody on June the 12th. Thank you.